In 2017, the horror movie, The Bye Bye Man, was released and was almost immediately bashed by both critics and fans. While I didn't think it was as bad as many say, it's certainly a pretty bad movie with a confusing and pointless storyline, pretty horrific acting, and a villain who's really not scary. Now, while the film suffered from a number of flaws, in my opinion, probably the greatest was this hopelessness feeling that resonates within the characters. I kept watching, I kept waiting for that aha moment when they were going to discover how to beat the Bye Bye Man, but it never came. And ultimately, there was no real suspense because of this, as they were essentially going up against someone who was unbeatable. Now, the plot of the Bye Bye Man had the feel of many horror movies. 3 college students rent a massive abandoned home, probably filled with asbestos, in the middle of the country. How 3 college kids, Elliot, named Elliot John, and Sasha in the movie, can afford the rent on this home, I really have no idea. The home definitely looks more like a house you would see on HGTV, not a place college kids live in. But beside the point, anyhow, in the home, there is a nightstand. It was once owned by a journalist named Larry Redman, who went crazy and murdered and killed 8 people. It's soon discovered that the journalist was writing a story on a young boy who murdered his family. He discovered the evil entity known as the Bye Bye Man, and the being invokes such fear, according to the movie, that he causes people to go mad and commit horrific acts. Now, coming back to the nightstand, college student Elliot finds the name Bye Bye Man scratched on it. He says it, and essentially from there he unleashes the evil being. Soon he tells his friends, and they're aware of the Bye Bye Man as well. It begins to stalk the 3 students in the house and also one of their friends too. Now, one of the big themes this movie tries to push is around this mantra of don't say it, don't think it. And in the movie, saying his name or telling others essentially puts you on Bye Bye Man's hit list. It's the reason why the writer, back in 1969, killed 8 people. He wanted the Bye Bye Man stories to end with his victims because they knew his name. Still, I think that the writers, they bit off more here than they could chew with this concept. It doesn't really land the way they tried to make it. And also, if this was true, according to that logic, one could simply ignore the Bye Bye Man and he would go away, right? It would be somewhat similar to how Pennywise was killed at the end of It 2, maybe. Still, probably, again, my biggest issue with this movie was the Bye Bye Man was simply unbeatable. He was invincible. I kept waiting to see how the kids could beat him or possibly escape his evil, but it never came. It just felt like they were basically helpless, even at the end. The Bye Bye Man, he tortures his victims, making them hallucinate. And the hallucinations in the movie, they get more and more severe, essentially until the person just goes insane and does anything the Bye Bye Man wants. How can one beat the hallucinations beyond their control? None of the characters really managed to do this consistently in the movie. And to me, I just felt the 3 main characters, whose acting was definitely less than desirable, let's just say, they had absolutely no shot the entire movie. To point out one other big weakness, which is just the Bye Bye Man himself, he really wasn't scary, and it was a big mistake for the writers to show him so often in this film. Also, what's up with the dog that follows him around? I mean, that's just completely weird. Now, one other thing that I thought was a pretty big flaw too was that we got no background or history around the Bye Bye Man. I think this could have added more depth to the story when you know at least something about what you're dealing with. Now, in some movies, some horror movies, it is true you don't need it, but in this case, you definitely did. Now, one final thought on the Bye Bye Man himself is the name's just kind of dumb too. Now, there were other types of errors in the movie. Continuity errors were plentiful, although I can usually deal with these when they're minor, But one I need to point out is when Kim, who is the medium in the movie, sees the wrecked car on the side of the road, the car and family aren't actually on the train tracks. She, of course, is hallucinating this and gets out and starts running and eventually gets hit by a train and is killed. Now, just prior to this, she's telling Elliot that the Bye-Bye Man makes people see things that aren't there. So if she's seeing this and Elliot's saying there's nothing there, just moments before when she knows these hallucinations are real, it's definitely something that's just inconsistent. Not to mention the family was right before the train tracks as well. Now, one other thing around this movie that was pretty surprising was Carrie-Anne Moss and Faye Dunaway had small parts. Both actresses that have been in some great movies. Carrie-Anne Moss with The Matrix and Faye Dunaway with Bonnie and Clyde. Now, Carrie-Anne Moss looked pretty disinterested in playing a role and probably realized once the movie was done, she didn't need the payday that bad. Faye Dunaway, I have no idea why she wanted to do this. Maybe they showed up at her house with a dump truck of money. Probably something like that. Now, in sum, The Bye-Bye Man, it was a pretty below average horror film. Although I'm not going to say that it's as bad as many said it was. Although I certainly couldn't really argue with someone who was, saying it was one of the worst horror movies of 2017. The movie suffered from bad acting, especially Sasha, a confusing and frustrating storyline, and a villain who is essentially unbeatable and not scary at all. Sadly, the writing, it failed to produce any tension or suspense, which is exactly what you need in a movie like this. If you haven't seen this, I would skip this personally. If you have, definitely let me know your thoughts. What do you think? Appreciate it.